Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 22 of the Fair Housing Insiders. And today we are talking about reasonable accommodations when it comes to resident allergies. And we'll be looking at some interesting scenes that we'll have Leslie Tucker, who is with us today, give us some commentary and some best practices and suggestions on. So thank you for being here. Please give us a thumbs up. We always appreciate your support, and we know you're sharing this with your community. So let's get right into our topic. So Leslie, give us the rundown. What's important? What's an overview when it comes to allergies and reasonable accommodations?
Absolutely. It's nice to be here, Jonathan, again. So allergies are tough because allergies come in lots of different types. They come in lots of varying severities. Some people get itchy eyes. Some people, their throat closes up, and all of the in between. So whether an allergy actually rises to the level of a disability is the question. And it's a difficult question. A disability is defined as a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities. So, lots of different types of allergies might be uncomfortable. They might make you sneeze a lot, but do they substantially limit one or more of your major life activities? Probably not. So lots of allergies probably don't rise to the level of a disability and therefore would not warrant a reasonable accommodation, but some could. So it's important that you don't jump to any sort of conclusions when it comes to resident allergies.
Nice. Yeah, excellent. Thank you so much. Nice overview. And another key reason why fair housing education is so critical, to be able to know the differences. So we're going to look at a couple of scenes. And in our first scene, it's the question, is the allergy a disability or not? So let's take a look at our scene, and then Leslie will have your feedback and tips. So let's take a look at it now.
I was on a phone call, but I thought that I heard Mrs. Sills saying something about candles?
Yes, she was complaining about her neighbor using scented candles. She says she's allergic to the smell. I don't know what I'm supposed to do about it. It's not like it's a disability.
So one thing that this leasing agent did correctly was make the connection between this person's complaint or request regarding a smell of these candles to potentially a disability. Mm-hmm. So, without having to be told this is because of a disability, without anyone making that statement, he did make that potential connection. One thing he did wrong, though, is jump to his own conclusion regarding whether her allergy or her claimed allergy to this odor really was a disability or not. Staff can't make that judgment call. That's not their job. They're not health professionals. And that's important to remember. Regardless of how obvious they may think it is, mm-hmm. When it comes to fielding these types of complaints, if one is ever challenged, you can't kind of lean back on, well, it was obvious that it wasn't a disability. That's not really a thing. You have to have documentation that you went through the proper steps. So in this situation, we have a woman who says that she's allergic to the smell of these scented candles that her neighbor burns. First of all, there's probably rules in a lot of communities against burning candles, but regardless, whether it's an air freshener, whether it's incense or a candle or whatever's making the smell that this person does not like, I would recommend doing the easiest and kind of most obvious thing first, which is for management to go and just politely speak to that neighbor and say, look, one of your neighbors is sensitive to the smell of your candle or air freshener or whatever. Would you mind just not using it anymore? that could really solve the whole problem without even going into whether there's a disability involved or not. That may not solve the problem, however. So if the neighbor doesn't want to comply, doesn't want to stop burning her candles or incense, then management is going to have to take some additional action. And that's going to involve determining whether this person really does have a disability, and whether they need to, take further action as a reasonable accommodation. So that's when you sort of need to get your forms involved. You need to either ask for some sort of documentation or letter from a healthcare provider, or in the alternative, and then what we recommend doing is send your own verification form to, whatever healthcare provider she designates. That's a preferable step to just asking for a letter, because you can ask very specific questions in your verification forms, and you know that you're going to be getting all the information you need. When you just ask for letters, a lot of times they're completely insufficient, right, and you really don't get what you need from them. So, being able to send out a verification form with specific questions on it. For example, has this person been tested for specific allergies? If so, which ones? Because what she could be attributing to the smell of a candle could be coming from her carpet. I mean, who knows? So it's important that you ask those questions, right, to determine if this really is something that you need to address as a reasonable accommodation. Once you get the information that you need from whoever she designates as her verifier, then you can start determining what remedies may be effective for him or her. And one remedy may be, placing filters in this person's, in the vents. That's been successful for some of my clients in cases of, cigarette smoke that was coming in or other odors that were coming into their unit. They installed some special filters in their vents. Another possible solution could be installing some kind of air purifier or air sterilizer. That could be a potential solution. So, once you're able to determine whether this person is disabled, and whether you are therefore obligated to address this concern, then you can start kind of communicating with the resident to determine what you can best do to solve the problem, to make her unit, more habitable for her, or him or her, sorry. I think probably a last case scenario would be a transfer, offering the person a transfer to get away from the scented candles. But obviously those aren't always successful, because you could just be transferring them next to another person that, likes different types of scented candles or, air freshener. So odors are tough. Odors are everywhere. And it's hard to get away from them sometimes if someone is very, very sensitive or allergic to a certain odor. So those are just some suggestions on how you can handle odor requests, but they are tough to ultimately solve.
Right. Thank you so much, Leslie. Yeah, as an attorney and partner with Williams, Edelstein, and Tucker, we really appreciate your insights. So nicely laid out. It's not just cut and dry. It resonated how you mentioned at the outset. We're not health professionals. We're not doctors, so we can't make those kinds of decisions. But you provide a lot of ways for everyone who's listening to our show today to really know what's involved in trying to assist that resident and be able to take care of their needs, as if there's a reasonable accommodation to be made. So very nice. Thank you very much. Okay, so that leads us into our next scenario. And this one's interesting. So the question really comes down to what if the resident goes to another level? Is the reasonable now, is it a reasonable accommodation, or is it now unreasonable? And what would you do in that situation? So let's take a look at this scene and get your feedback on this one.
Mrs. Sills came back in this morning and demanded that everyone on her floor be banned from using scented candles or any air fresheners because she can smell them when she's walking from the elevator to her apartment. What am I supposed to tell her?
All right, in this scenario, where this resident has sort of elevated her request from just her neighbor bothering her to her entire floor bothering her, is getting into the realm of potentially unreasonable. As I mentioned before, there are multiple things that you can do as a manager, as management staff, to try to accommodate someone who has an allergy that rises to the level of a disability. Like I said, air purifiers, filters, sterilizers, a transfer even. But these things may not work. They may not help the person. They may not, alleviate their symptoms of, whatever reaction they're having to these odors. If that is the case, there is a point where there really is no other possible remedy to help the person, to help the resident. And sometimes you do get to that point. The important thing is that before you do get to that point, that you really have tried your best to implement solutions that could help. And you need to have documented all of these efforts. Any conversation that you have with the resident about, well, let's try this. Have you thought about, trying this? We can install, whatever in your unit to try to help you. And if those things don't work, like I said, maybe last case, in desperation, you can offer them a transfer to another floor. To be honest, that almost never helps these types of situations. But again, you kind of need to exhaust all of the options. I wouldn't transfer a resident around 9 times because they keep smelling things. I would maybe give it 1 time. And if that doesn't help, you have, I can say pretty confidently that you've exhausted all of your options. You have documentation and evidence that you have had conversations, that you have tried all of these things and nothing is working. And I think that would be probably good enough to show that you've done your due diligence in the case that he or she, raises a challenge or a complaint with HUD, that you have failed to reasonably accommodate him or her.
Right.
So I think, sometimes you just have to leave it at that.
Yeah. Yeah. Very nice. Yeah. It's interesting, the dynamics, just listening to your comments, boy, there's just, there's so many more variables that have to be considered when dealing with this particular facet of the Fair Housing Act and the American Disabilities Act. And you, again, put it together for us in a way it was nice, clear, and understandable. This is just to my summary, just keep at it. Like, just keep doing what you can, document it well, look for options, and do your best with that situation. And at times there may just not be necessarily a solution. So thank you so much. Thanks for being on the show. It's great to have you back again.
Yes, great to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, definitely have to get you on for another episode in the future. We are at episode 22 already. I mean, how amazing is that? Going into 2021, and it's exciting to be able to bring this education to everyone today. So for all of our listeners, please remember to give us that thumbs up. We appreciate your support. We offering this education complimentary for everyone in our industry, because this is important for all of us to know. It keeps our staff safe, keeps our company safe, keeps our residents, we puts them in the forefront to make sure that we take care of their rights as well. So thank you for being here. We look forward to seeing you on our next show. Take care, everyone.